All right, so my talk is about creating tutorial videos as a supplement for lectures. Let me start off by talking about the challenges I've been facing in my institution, and could be generalized to yours as well. So number one, about complex computational thinking students have to learn. And usually they have no prior exposure to such subjects. So it's quite difficult for students to grasp them at the first go. And especially when the class size is huge, it's really difficult for students to really catch up with the pace. For example, in my institution, that's kind of the lecture theater I was teaching in the past winter. You can easily go about 500 students to actually take a look after. And it's definitely not possible for me to pause very often as an instructor or to give attention to students, even when necessary. So it's quite an issue to resolve. Okay, and then in the paper, you will see I was trying to demonstrate to you how to create tutorial for OOP, association and loops, but I'll give you another example today for polymorphism and dynamic binding, okay, just as a variety. And then weekly laboratories is another challenge. We really want the student to really achieve the learning outcomes by doing the weekly labs. However, they kind of complain that the lecturers themselves do not really prepare them for the weekly lab exercise. There's a gap over there. Ideally, me as an instructor, I should be able to provide in-depth and remarks and illustration on the complex example to show my insight into the subject. However, it's not quite easy to be achieved or implemented because lecture hours, they're pretty much fixed, only 3 hours a week, and it's really difficult to have a logical decomposition of the subjects. Some subject might take longer, some subject might take shorter. So it's really, there's no flexibility there, basically. And then lecture hours is pretty much also limited, so it's really hard to really have a thorough and uninterrupted discussion with students. That's kind of the challenge. So how do we help these typical frustrated students? Students usually say, I attended all the lectures, however, I just couldn't really finish the labs, or I couldn't even get started. How are we supposed to help them to really complete the assignments? So now this is the motivating question for my paper. I thought, how can we make the in-depth and thorough illustration somehow accessible to the students outside the class so they can do their study at their own pace so as to complete their lab assignments? That's kind of the motivating question for this paper. I'm trying to address that. Okay, so this paper here is about contribution for creating effective tutorial videos, at least for my purpose, a technique for I want to record illustration on complex ideas on a drawing tablet. I'll show you exactly how that works. And then we want to somehow set up some starter pages before the recording occurs. And I'll show you also what that looks like. And then we have to do very frequent and heavy weights annotation on the drawing tablet to show the students the entire process of building up the illustration. Okay, and then we allow the student to study online, actually study to get access to the tutorial videos, in my case, YouTube. Okay, so let me illustrate to you some tutorial video. Let me make the following assumption. The current video I'm going to demonstrate builds on top some certain previous tutorial videos. So there will be certain details I wouldn't be able to cover, just to let you know. Okay? Okay, so now from last tutorial videos, basically we talk about this particular inheritance hierarchy where we got 3 classes over here. Let me just go over very quickly with you. So we have the superclass called students over here, and then we got resident students and non-resident students as the subclasses. Okay, resident student, they actually live on campus, so we have to charge it a little bit higher for their tuition. Non-resident student, they live outside the campus, so we charge it a little bit cheaper. That's kind of the simplification we have. Okay, for students, we have name, we have an array of courses, and also we keep track of how many courses they have, number of courses. And also we got register a particular course, and also we can get their tuition. So this get tuition over here is the base amount that we are talking about. We'll see how it can be overridden or redefined in the subclasses. So now for resident students, basically we introduce so-called premium rates, like 1.25 to charge them higher. And the get tuition here is overridden by using premium rate to calculate. And then symmetrically for non-resident students, we introduce discount rate. So when we calculate the tuition, we have to use discount rate to calculate, for example, 0.5. Okay, that's kind of the structure we went through from the last tutorial video. I assume you're okay. So what I would do now is to go over very quickly with the Java code with you, very quickly, okay, just to see. So now we have the course class over here. We got title, we got fee. Very imaginable constructor to initialize the both attributes, and also we got title and we got fee. okay? Something we went through already. So now we got this top superclass over here. We got name, we got array of courses, and we also got a counter, number of courses, NOC. And then we can, before I go on any further, let's have a quick demo on each class as we go through, okay? So what I would do is I'm going to set up something over here to show you. Okay, I already got some partial diagrams drawn, okay? So now I'll read it to you. The code is not really showing well, but I'll read it to you, don't worry. So now what I will start with is just building up the courses over here. So now I will start with, first of all, the first line, we are trying to create a new course called ECS'2030. It's a course. And what we'll do is ECS'2030 is now going to point to an object over here with the appropriate title. That's the first line. And then we have the second line over here, which will be 3311, just another course with a different title. And 3311 is now pointing to just another object over here, and then software design. So far, no students has registered for these two courses yet, but we will do in a moment. Let me go back to the slides. So now we have students as we went through, and then you can actually initialize a student's name. You can get their name. You can also register a student for a course by assigning the course into the corresponding array elements. And then we got get tuition. So this part here, we simply just calculate the base amount. We'll simply just add up all the fees together without any premium rate or discount rate, not yet. Okay, but this part of the code will be reused later. Okay, so let's talk about one of the student classes, a subclass. We got resident students over here, and then we initialize the name. And also, we introduce the premium rates over here with a setter and getter. And then we have get tuition. So now we're using the word super over here, as we said. You're going to reuse the version from the from the parents class, and then we're going to get the base amount. And then we apply the premium rates over here. Okay? So now let's illustrate right away. Let's go back to this particular tester over here. Let's go to the next line. Let's see how things happen. So I will now go for that particular line. So this line here, we simply create a resident student called Hyang. So what that will do is Hyang is now pointing to a resident student's object over here, and then with a proper name. And also, we simply initialize the array of courses to be, let's say, up to 10 courses, initially all null. Okay? And then the next line, we're going to set out the premium rate to be 1.25. So what I will do is I'll put 1.25 over here to set it up. And then next one, we're going to register Hyang for these two courses. So we're going to say Hyang the register, and also Hyang the register. So the two courses we're going to register over here. And then let's see how that will work. So the first course, ECS'2030, what that's going to happen is, so now Hyang the courses at position 0, after registration, is now going to point to the first course. So that's how we copy addresses around in OOP. And then the second register 3311 over here, so now at position 1, is now going to point to the second course. Let me redraw it. It's now going to point to the second course. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we're going to see how the second student is going to be defined in just a moment. Okay, so now we're done with the first students. Let's go back to the slides over here, and then we'll see. Non-resident student, the second kind, the second subclass. And then we got non-resident students, and also we got discount rate that we just introduced to this kind of students. And then we have also get tuition. And for this one here, we're going to calculate the base amount, and then we're going to apply the discount rate. Okay, pretty much similar to before. And now let's see how that will be visualized in our iPad over here. So what I will do is, let's see over here. So now, non-resident students, Jiyun, over here, that's the second students. And then I'm going to set the discount rate to be 0.75. So what I will do is over here, so let's see, let me see this, okay? So now Jiyun is now pointing to this non-resident students, and then again, the name has been set up properly, and also the array has been initialized properly, just as before, okay? They're done accordingly, like before. And then you can see now I'm setting the discount rate to be 0.75. So I'll simply set it up over here. Okay, and as you can imagine over here, we're going to set up the registration for Jiyun. So what I will do is you're going to register for these two courses over here as before. So they will be classmates basically. So what I will do is, so now I'm going to register 2030 and followed by 3311. So now to register for both of them, let me do that quickly. So now At position 0, so now we're going to point to the first objects over here. You can see now we got multiple arrows pointing to the same object. That's so-called aliasing, as we talked about before. Okay, just make sure to review the video from last time. And also index 1, so now it's pointing to the second objects. Okay, you can see it's a very similar registration process. Okay, let me go back to definition over here. So far we talk about course, we talk about students, we talk about the two kinds of students, and we have visualized how they work at a runtime. Finally, we're going to build up this student management system here, where we got students being an array of students, and also keep track of how many students there are. And then we have a constructor. Let's say we can store up to 10,000 students, let's say. And then we add the students into the array the same way as before. And then we try to get the students. The size of the array over here depends on how many students we have in the system. Okay, so that one is also straightforward. Okay, so after this, we're going to now consider two exercises for us. Okay, let me just show two more lines, and then we can consider two exercises. So what I will do is I want to show you how the student management system can be visualized over here. So now, first of all, I'll say I create an instance of student management system over here. So now SMS is now going to point to this particular object over here of this type, student management system. And then I'm going to also the array initially of size 10,000, all now. So now how do I visualize adding these two students into a very similar process? You just assign to the corresponding slots of the array. Let's do that one by one quickly. So now how do I add Hyun as the first students? So at index 0 of the students array, so now we're going to let it point to Hyun over here. And then for Jiyun, so that will be the second position, index 1, and now it's going to point to this student here. So now we have a complete object structure to consider. Okay? So now let's see how we can answer the following question for the two exercises. Okay, so this tester here is exactly what we have just illustrated as we go through. Exercise number 1. If you consider line number 14 and line number 15, how does it result in a polymorphic array? How does it? Polymorphic array simply means dynamic type for each element in the array is simply different. How is that possible? If you look back to the diagram, so now the answer should be quite easy, because now you can see that for this particular student management system, the students array at index 0 over here is pointing to an object over here of type resident students, which is different from the type of non-resident student, which is pointed by position 1. Okay, that's how you illustrate is polymorphic. Okay, that's exercise number 1 quickly. And then if I go back over here, exercise number 2, how do you add some code to the SMS tester above so that we can output the tuition due for the students? Before we try this particular exercise here, I would like to show you what's expected from the console. What we'd like to see is Hyun and Jiyun, even though they have registered in the two courses, the same two courses, but they got discount rate versus premium rates. So Hyun should pay higher, Jiyun should pay lower. That's what we expect to see. But how do we make this happen? So now, given that in the student management system class, we declare students array. Now, we want to make sure somehow the first resident student is going to be applied premium rates, and the second non-resident student will be applied discount rate. Dynamic binding is our friend over here. So we want to make sure we're going to run a loop, basically. The first iteration is going to make sure that it's going to call to get tuition from resident students. And the second iteration is going to call to get tuition from non-resident students. Let's write the code, and then I'll illustrate to you exactly how that's going to happen. So now what I will do is I will go back to Eclipse over here, and what I'm invoking it, I'm going to illustrate to you the idea quickly. Okay. Just give me, okay. So now I'm going to Eclipse over here. So now this is our tester over here. Okay, I'm just going to continue right from there. So now I'll say for integer I is assigned to 0, I is less than SMS dot number of students, and then I plus plus. Okay, so now I'm just going to save a little bit of typing just to illustrate. What I would say is, so now let's say SMS dot students at position I. So now I could be 0, I could be 1 because we got only 2 students. So now when I is equal to 0, we're going to make sure we invoke the version with premium rates. And the second iteration will be with discount rate. I can say get tuition. Okay, that's exactly how you can do it. Of course, you can make it a little bit more informative by creating some local variable, but you can do that as an exercise. Let's try that, and then if you launch it, you're going to see that that's exactly what we'll get. Okay? Right, so let's go back here. So overall, the solution means for the very first iteration, you're going to invoke this particular object with premium rates. For the second iteration, you're going to invoke this object with the discount rate. Okay? Okay, that's about the tutorial. Okay. Now, I'm just going to show you something here. What I have illustrated was more like a pattern for creating tutorial. So usually what you will do is you're going to specify what the problem is using some slideshow, using some IDE, kind of up to you. And also, you can sketch the solution on the drawing tablet. Of course, you're going to make sure you have some starter pages to really get to the point. And then you can develop the solution in the programming IDE, assuming that we're teaching some programming, we're teaching a programming course. And also can discuss the solution eventually using a drawing tablet as well. So you can just try to build on top. And then the drawing tablet, when it is used, you want to make sure that somehow you will annotate on starter pages to explain every critical step to the student. So you can take your time because it's going to be recorded. Especially you can see that this is an annotated page compared with when it was started clean. Okay, you can see how much was added basically for student to learn. Of course, student can watch the recording to see the process. That's really the valuable thing. Okay, and then to see more examples, you can read the paper, or you can go to my lectures page. I actually got links with all my tutorial videos. You can also go there. Okay, it's also on the paper. Okay, I want to just go point to you very quickly about the contribution, the overall approach, which is quite straightforward to follow. Okay, again, let me go back to iPad here. So now basically what you will have is, so this is myself, the instructor, and then before the lab or outside the class, I will try to basically record everything on my computer screen, including slideshow, code demo, and also illustration on a drawing tablet. Everything will be recorded and also uploaded to some sharing platform, in my case, YouTube. And then the students can definitely reiterate and on demand, and they can study on their pace. Hopefully that will help them on their lab exercises. Okay, that's kind of the overall picture over here. Okay, let's finish up the slides over here. Okay, so this is just like a snapshot of one of the tutorial series that I have. Okay, student can go there and watch the tutorial. And also, they can also download the iPad notes for them to study. For example, this is the notes I just showed. Got quite many pages, but I'll just give you an idea. You can see lots of notes over here, so students don't have to worry about taking notes themselves. They can actually get notes from the video right away. Okay, things like that. Okay. Anyway, all right, so now let's think about the teaching context quickly. So now, 1 minute, 2 minutes? Okay, so now the proposed approach has been adopted in undergraduate teaching, okay? So I've taught about 7 iterations for 4 courses for first, second, and third year. 12 series, 148 tutorial videos, and about 60 hours of tutorial video. I think the student has some good feedback on that. And also more than 1,200 students. These are just an example. You have some Java programming from scratch, how to do Java programming for developing Android app, and also how to develop more advanced applications. Okay? However, the approach is so general, you can definitely apply that to other complex idea, any idea you want to teach. Okay? Final slides. So now the reflection will be the most important bits about this approach is the instructor, you have to prepare all the starter pages. You got to make a decision what you want to show beforehand. You're going to prepare, basically. And then it's very effective, so you can plan everything ahead. You don't have to worry about building things from scratch during the recording. And also, having drawing tablet versus slides is very flexible. It's very dynamic, depending on how many details to your judgment you want to show for that particular recording. Okay, and then for the student, they can really review as many times as they like to reinforce. If you want to find out more, read my paper, Adopting the Approach, Technical Requirements, and also students' perception, and also there's some improvement on their performance, I believe. Also, you can see some data over there, and also comparison with other works. Similar approach has been also adopted for delivering effective lecture. I presented this paper in the first global ASEAN Computing Education Conference back in May. So if you are interested, you can also look for that. Okay, questions, please.
Thank you. This is the moment for you not to just read the paper, but also ask questions about it in advance. So what do you have for questions?
Yes.
So your setup's quite elaborate. I was wondering if it was successful for you to convince other colleagues or other people from other institutions to use it.
You know what? I tell you what, it's really interesting question. Your question basically, will my colleague adopt this approach? I would say just about the setup itself is quite troublesome at the moment, technically, because I need to have my iPad, have my laptop, many things. But I would say since this one is more about offline recording, as long as somebody, the technical people, they can set up like a studio for faculty members to record videos, it may not be too bad. But again, it's more like a trade-off, right? Whether you really can take time, recording all the details for the students. If you really have the passion to recording them, of course you will be willing to dedicate. But so far, my colleague, they said, too much time.
Yeah, if someone else knows that if there are no other questions, urgent questions, then you can first get the question, then we go back to you.
Yeah. Do you need much time to rehearse before? Because when you do it...
You mean recording?
Yeah.
I would say it's an interesting question. I would say so far, I didn't have, well, I would say in the very beginning, when I'm not really into the mood, I may have to, maybe for about 30 seconds, I gotta stop because it sounds awkward, what I'm trying to say over there. But after about 1 minute or 2 minutes, when you're really into the mood, you really keep yourself relaxed. So I would say, of course, somehow you gotta rehearse. Also depends on the experience. Yeah. But I would say what I presented now, I kind of do it on the fly. But usually when I can really sit down and make myself comfortable and record the videos. It's a little bit different from giving a lecture. So I say this one, yeah, it's quite a pleasant experience, I would say.
So are you offering this as a replacement to normal lectures or it's complementary?
It'll be complementary for sure. So it cannot be, I tell you what, it's interesting because for myself, I use similar approach for both lectures and tutorial. I told my students, this is not meant to be a replacement for lectures. So it's really meant to be, when you come to lectures, you don't have to worry about copying the notes. Everything I said, everything I write down is recorded. You can definitely make reference to them. So you can really pay attention to what I'm trying to say.
So
And
this is the lecture.
oh no, this one, yeah, because somehow I couldn't really, I cannot just show you the recorded video, right, today. So I'm trying to show you the recording process. But I can think about the visual experience for tutorial video and lectures are similar. The only drawback for tutorial video is I cannot take students' question, right, because I can record it offline. Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.